final part of this series, made for y'all a cheat sheet document to use going forward, something that you can use as a tool or a resource for your coaches. That webinar is awfully long to sit through and watch. The real highlights and the session highlights that are there before are still very useful to go through. But I try to consolidate this down into a very simple and effective manner of how to see these workouts, especially pertaining to like rep targets, chipper style workouts, things of that nature. Again, this PDF is going to live hopefully within your studio, and some of these are going to look very familiar because we've already done a handful of these. At Houston, we've done about 2 to 4 of these already just kind of throughout the year, and haven't really touched any of the skill ones yet. But the first 4 we're going to go through are the foundations workouts that you'll notice are titled differently. So those first 4 that are listed out are really focused on the fundamentals of like what HYROX training feels like, form standards and movement standards, while incorporating much longer working sets than what we're used to. So week 1, the programming focus here is an interval style training, and it is just 1 lap around the room, 3 sets at each station, kind of similar to what we do with the triple threat workout, except it starts with a long working set. As you can see, that first one right off the rip is 90 seconds of work. And then it drops to half of that, 45 seconds for that second set, and then 30 seconds by that last one. What we're focusing on is the management of intensity and the recovery through movement. So in HYROX, you really don't get a ton of time to really rest unless it's like within the rock zones or you're coming out of a station. Typically on the track, you keep yourself moving around as you go. So this is learning how to breathe through the chaos, control the chaos of the movements of everything that's going on. Not a lot of working or a lot of resting sets in this. So only 30 seconds, then 15, 15, no water breaks throughout the workout. Really after that first set is when you get that good bit of rest, but then the 2 leading into that first set at the next station, very short gaps in between. So first set's really be coached more as an active recovery, with the second set being more so of like 30 seconds actively recovering, still bring the heart rate down, pushing that last 15. So then you can gear yourself up for a big push into that final set. So you'll notice I'll hit a handful of different movements down at the bottom. But the ergs, whenever we're doing HYROX training, make sure they're set to meters, avoid calories or anything else, just because the race itself does track in meters. And coaching split times on the meters is just way more engaging besides just coaching the standard, like legs, core, arms, core, legs, kind of rotation through. So it can add just a little different element to your coaching. Devil's press, it is typically a supplement for a sled pull. We only have 2 sleds, so they are a little nice whenever they program these about not overdoing the sleds. But at times it can lead to some discomfort in studio setup, if so. So devil's press is something you'll see incorporated in there, and really just focusing on flat feet when you land and as close to the hands as possible whenever we're coming up out of that movement. And then you'll notice on a lot of the sleds too, typically for hitting a push, we want to practice that tucked position with the arms. Rather, we want to do the wraparound with the elbows, shoulders pressed into it, dragging the sled, or like I said, tucking your chest all the way through with the elbows pinned right by the sides. Just takes a lot of load off the shoulder versus holding the full extension out overhead. And then really and truly trying to prevent pushing on the small side as much as possible. I know that can be tough. There's going to be ways we could talk around, like how can you incorporate a push and a pull in the workout, especially with such a long working time. But normally we're doing heavier weights on the sleds, training heavier weights. So really push members to try to go heavy here. It's also an awesome confidence booster for a lot of folks. So first one, already been through interval trainings, the focus here, very similar style of what we already do at F45. Not spending a lot of time on that one. Week number 2, you start to see a little bit more of what they call a resistance focused workout. The focus here on this is the endurance lifting, just because we're now incorporating a 2.5 minute working set. And a lot of these workouts start splitting off into a giant block of time allotted to work through, similar to like our Apex, Valor, and a couple other one of those that run like a 5.5 minute clock, 6.5 minute clock. So week number 2 starts to introduce this a little bit more. Big thing we need to start focusing on, especially with the 2.5 minute working set, is are we picking up the right weight? Are people actually going to find something that they can stick with for a longer period of time of work? So just being able to complement that, and also knowing what is the race standard weight for that person's division. If they've openly told you like, hey, I want to train for the open, or if I want to train for the pro. And that last presentation I did, I've got that blocked out for you so you can refer to those weights and try to set them as close as possible to the appropriate weights here. So again, racetrack style, we go 1 lap around, and there is no water break incorporated in this besides that 15 seconds of rest. And after the 2.5 minutes of work, they go straight into 15 seconds of burpees, 15 seconds to breathe, and then they're right back into 2.5 minutes of work. Just like our stage 6 workout we did with the burpees, have that beginner target set, the intermediate target, and the advanced, just so people have a consistent number they're trying to hit. It is programmed like more so an endurance focused lift. We still have all 3 ergs in here. This is going to be one of the best times to start practicing that split time, that 2 minutes that you see on the screen per 500 meters split. And that range we typically coach is between like that 145 to 215, depending on how strong our athletes are or how conditioned they are, to start to identify what does that first half of that machine feel like, right? When I'm actually there experiencing the race, most people are going to get close to like a 500 to 700 meter rep range here. So having people actually track that and keeping that going forward with them into the workouts is going to add a lot more engagement with it. We don't have wall balls and we don't have a wall to throw against. So dead ball toss-ups are what we do to try to simulate that instead. If somebody is not comfortable doing a dead ball toss-up, can somebody come off the mic and tell me like a modification you would throw out for this person to still practice wall balls?
A dead ball squat press.
Perfect. So like a thruster, essentially. You can also control the height of what we're actually tossing that ball up in the air. Learning how to absorb the impact as the weight's coming down and not try to struggle and control it to burn out the arms and shoulders, limiting the amount of reps that we can do. So as that ball makes contact, as we return it to our chest, letting the knees loosen up and allowing our hips to drop down into our squat and rebounding on the way up, not bouncing necessarily, but a controlled bottom load of that position all the way back up to the top in one fluid motion. If we can't and we're not comfortable with the toss up, then we could just work on bringing it up overhead as a modification with that. But really working on absorption is going to be the biggest things to coach here. Now, for sled push and sled pull, if you are doing this and you want to stay with like just the long arm side, because we don't like pushing the short arm side like a T-Rex, what we can do is take the rope and tie it on the side where the long arms are. So the rope comes back to you through the middle there to where you can push down with the long arms, walk back, grab the rope and pull it back to you. So you don't have members literally trying to turn the sled on the track when it's got like 5 plates on it. Try to prevent that, make it easier, tie it in an ergonomical way that's going to fit the actual push and pull of what it's actually going to be at the race. So really try to utilize the long arms while we have these sleds. Additionally, with that, running is going to be incorporated in these a lot as well, especially at the same time the sleds are being used. You'll also see like walking lunges, farmers carries, things like that, which for our smaller friend studios that we have throughout the country, really be mindful of trying to locate a spot that if we're able to go outside and run, let's hit that. If not, let's find an alternative. If we can't hit sprints inside to a different movement, i.e. like burpees or something of that nature, that we could still train on a movement in there that is similar, that gets the heart rate up in a very like cardio-esque type of way. Okay, so as you're programming, as you're setting up, these are texts and things that at least we've had to talk through in our network, but just be mindful of when we're hitting setups with that. Believe we've all done week 2 and then week 3. Really like this one. This is when we start to get into combo sets, AMRAP style, trying to get a little bit more volume, but they really introduce it in a easier workload fashion, something that would be similar to a lot of our F45 classes, specifically Empire. It's 3 combo sets at each station. You're going to do 60 seconds of work, 10 seconds of rest, and you will have a water break in between each one. So it's not like 10 seconds just to quickly transition on to the next combo set. But we're introducing just a longer working time, even less rest here. And this is going to be a very mentally tough workout for the members to go through, just because not getting that break time in between is really like learning how to actively recover immediately, still with movement going into the next one, but still taking on a decent amount of weight load, trying to keep form, technique, all that good stuff, right? So what do we need to coach on these working sets? For the strength stations, the things that we have like our lunges, our sled push, our devil's presses again, thrusters, rep count these stations, make sure people are finding a target that is attainable for them to hit within that 60 seconds. Does not have to be unbroken. Have them break up the reps within like sets of 5, sets of 10, sets of 3, whatever's an achievable number for them, preventing as much rest as possible, but also preventing early burnout. Now, for the ergs that you can see, you're going to have all 3 ergs and the blue bikes out onto the floor. So just finding a consistent pace for them to work through in that 60 seconds, it's going to be a little bit easier than that 2.5 minute set that they had the workout before. So you may be able to find a little bit quicker split times, a little bit quicker cadence that you can actually push that cardio. Movements to watch for on this, again, just for spatial awareness and setting up the floor, you're going to have a farmer's carry on top of all of these ergs and sleds that are going to be out on the track as well. So again, just making sure that we're setting things up that have appropriate lanes, that if we can't do farmer's carries on the turf, where can we do them on the sides or behind in the back in the studio? It's not going to feel as comfortable as what we've done with the F45 workouts, just because there's a lot more movement and ground covered with a lot of these. Again, with the sleds, I already hit on this. Practicing the tucked or wrapped arms. Additionally, avoiding flat feet as people are pushing. That's going to be a common thing to see as well. It's just really dangerous on the Achilles if you allow that foot to be flat on the ground as someone's pushing. So really practicing getting up on the balls of the toes and trying to drive that sled forward. All right, week 4. This is actually where it gets a lot more fun. This is where you can see down in the bottom left corner, there's a whole lot going on there. And even though it says it's 9 stations, it's actually 18 stations you're going to go through and set up for. And setting these up, this is kind of like the Empire one with the A and B. Make sure you're setting things up close in proximity to where is a quick transition over to that secondary movement that you can see. So we've got 9 stations throughout. It's a follow the leader format. It's 210 seconds of work with 20 seconds of rest. And then it's only 1 set at each and 1 lap to get through. Similar to our Valor workout, that is a buy-in target that you see on the left for you to hit that number of reps. And then once completed there, you will then slide over for the max amount of meters or reps that you can get of that B movement. Similarly, with these style of workouts, big thing that I like to coach is that the A station is the focus of the day and making sure that we can accomplish that rep scheme here within that 3.5 minutes. For some folks, it may take the entire 3.5 minutes, and that's okay. Don't want people to feel rushed or that they're not actually getting a good set in if they're not able to get that rep count done within that allotted time. If they don't, be sure to track it for whenever we roll it again. We can go back and show the improvements that second time around or the areas of opportunity that we could focus on. So the A station, again, that's going to be your buy-in, but our focus here is to coach this one hard. You want people to try to go unbroken if possible within that first set, knocking out all those reps in a very controlled manner. If they're not able to go unbroken though, and some of these, like getting into the dead ball slams, the thrusters, you may want to change it up to a chipper style approach where it's like, hey, you're going to break up all these in sets of 10. You're going to break all these up in sets of 5. This is going to be game planning and talk that you really need to have on the track pre-class for those members that are in there early, just to help them get a grasp of what this is, because when they walk in and see this on the screens, they're going to be like, wow, this is a lot going on. So 2 different styles there. And then that B station is just as many reps / meters in the time remaining, just getting people to identify a comfortable pace to keep themselves moving, emphasis on active recovery at your B station. Movements to watch, all the ergs are going to be the B stations on this one. It does change as we get to week 8. You'll notice week 4 and week 8 are kind of like test workouts to go through that are very similar styled and working with the HYROX skill movement and some sort of accessory movement. You'll notice the rep counts will change and the positioning of some of these things will change as well. But for this one, the ergs, the big focus is to just find a comfortable pace for you, somewhere between like the 2 to 2.5 minute mark on those machines. And then knowing that whenever you set up your ergs, you're going to have dumbbells, kettlebells, and dead balls that are going to be needed to be placed very close to the machines for a quick transition off so they can slide over and hit those reps for the time remaining. Double push-up burpee versus a burpee. What is the difference? And I'm showing it here in the bottom left corner. At the A and B, right underneath the upright row and the rower, what is something you notice different about the double push-up versus the regular burpee?
Double push-up is a controlled push-up, and then the regular burpee is all the momentum from a regular burpee.
Perfect. Okay, so understanding these two here, this is a sneaky station, and even though it is a body weight station, they're essentially hitting 40 push-ups and completing 20 jumps before hitting their regular burpees. Now, when they do the controlled push-up down, notice that the body is not rolling through when they're going and doing this burpee. The hips don't really make full contact with the floor. On station B, they start with rolling down from the hips to the chest and then roll themselves back up. I would highly recommend coaching it this way. And I know some of us have, thoughts on the burpee itself of it being like an actual push-up versus an actual momentum roll through. For the sake of the race itself and coaching the form on this, coach the roll through, because when you're actually doing the race, I promise you your shoulders and everything are going to be shot to where a push-up is not going to be in your back pocket. You're not going to want to waste time and energy on that. But that first part of it, 20 reps to focus on there of that quality push-up to build the strength in the shoulders, should allow the burpee afterwards to feel much easier on the arms and allow the core and the legs to start taking over this movement itself. So just want to be big and just coaching the two differences on that. And even current members in the studio that you already know have this HYROX, bug and are want to do this, have them start practicing that roll through with the burpee. And if they've traditionally done it with the push-ups, they may start cranking out like a whole lot more reps. And they may be like, oh my gosh, I actually love burpees now. Still haven't gotten that yet, but still it might help. Box jumps as well and setting up the boxes. I know some of us like to double stack, tall box, 30 inches, love to jump over the box. When we do this style of training, please try to stay with these two heights, the 20-inch and the 24-inch height, which is the regular flat, and then just flipping it up on its side. There's no boxes in the race itself, but it's a good quad glute builder for working through when you're pushing the sleds, when you're doing your lunges. And so if y'all will keep it at that height, it's going to be more appropriate for almost everybody in the studio. If we have to bring out the red boxes, absolutely, please do that as a modification. But for standard, try to stick around these two and try to prevent people going up too high, just because the volume you're going to see here, the legs are not going to follow suit always, especially when you start hitting the box jumps at the end. So just make sure, coach that through, try to be picky on that. If you've got that member that's like, I got it, I can do it, then like, have at it, let them go, but do your very best to try to explain that stuff. These are the ones that I really liked looking at a lot more, was the skills workouts. And this is kind of like how workout 4 ended, transitions into more of this like partner-based workout and rep targets. So for our people that are like, oh, I don't want to do HYROX by myself, I'm nervous about it, I'm not sure, like these are going to be your workouts you're going to want to pull out and say, find your partner, come show up today and do this one and practice and see what it actually feels like in our version of it, so you can get a good grasp of what to expect in the race. So week 5, programming focus here. You'll notice that this floor setup looks exactly like the ringer, and because it pretty much is. We've got partner-based workout and really working on transitions to and from the ergs, with the outer pod being 6 different movements. As you can see here, more accessory-based, a lot of burpee variations that you're working through and some weights thrown in as well. The movements are not changing on these workouts. These are preset, so 100%, this is what you're gonna see every time on these. That outer pod, you work at one set at each station, and you're going to take a lap around, 50 seconds of work, 5 seconds of rest. So it is like once you start flowing, you keep moving yourself all the way around until you complete that lap. And then the people that are working on the ergs will transition out to the outer pod, and then you and your partner would move into the inner pod with the ergs. You'll make sure you hit all the ergs. So that means you've got 3 laps to get through, meaning you will keep transitioning from the erg back to the outer pod, back to the next erg, back to the outer pod, but you grab your partner and start moving along with them as you do this, so y'all can trade out the time on the ergs. That inner pod is 5.5 minutes with the partner on the erg. Honestly, you should hit your 1,000-meter counts within this. You should be able to get high volume, especially with you and your partner being able to trade out that work, and you actually use that time while you're at the ergs as your recovery. As you're resting and your partner's working, this is actually where you're going to get your water break and your time to breathe, even in the race as well. That's when a lot of athletes will go grab water, set it down, take it there, or just in general, just step off to the side, hands on the knees, like breathing and praying. Erg and transitions, how many meters until we switch? What I would really recommend on this one, since there is not a rep target fully placed on these, is letting people know beforehand, hey, on the rowers and the skiers, recommended change between like every 150 meters to 250 meters to rotate. Should give you about a solid 30 seconds, 45 seconds to rest. And then on the biker, push it, double it up a little bit more because you can get those meters on there quicker. So something like 400 to 500 meters, rotate out there just to make sure people are working in even loads and not taking advantage of the resting time. Movements to watch here, dumbbell ground to shoulder. This one does not come around a lot in these. I just want to address two different ways. I know we coach this. Both of these I feel like are acceptable depending on how tall our client is and how far down they can get with the dumbbells. So hinge to a squat, which is where you can see in the video here, our guy at station 3 is doing more of a hinge movement, more of an RDL to bring those weights back up, almost simulating like a kettlebell swing to get them. Or we can do it all the way from a clean, which is where you're bringing your hips more down towards your heels. So you would see his chest lift up a little bit more and then fire up into that clean. These are just the two that I'd really recommend and really work on the full depth and range of motion. As always, if we have to go to more of a hanging, then make it a very quick, like hang clean to squat, then focusing more on the hip hinge itself in that top half of the movement. And then the double kettlebell swing. This is just always a tough one, and especially with a 50-second working set, making sure that people understand the sumo stance here, getting the feet out nice and wide, the hips hinge, chest comes down, and keeping those kettlebells tight in that neutral position. I find I almost run into it every time somebody tries to like turn them hands over and starts trying to swing them through, and they nearly take their knees out when they do that. So really just focusing on that squeeze there. If they have a soft bend in the elbows when they come up, like our guy does here at station 6, totally fine. If we can teach it more of the straight arm, like American swing style, go for that as well. Week 6, we go back into that empire kind of state of work again, except this one is definitely a lot more movement and engine builder with it. Okay. So partner-based workout again, you got partner starting at A and you would start at B. And now we're incorporating that rep target and chipper style and partner all into one workout here. All of your A stations are going to be actual HYROX skill movements, things that are going to help you actually improve in the race. So you can see we've got the rower, we've got a thruster, we've got a lunge, ski erg, and then the burpee broad jump down at 5A. All the other movements that you see there, minus the sled pull, are not included in the race. And even that version of the sled pull is not there either. So you're really just working on a lot more form and technique of like proper pulling position with that sled. So at your A station, partner A is going to complete that rep target seen on the screen, while partner B does the accessory movement. Once partner A completes that, they will dictate the rotation in the switch, and they will do this for 6.5 minutes at that station. So they will continue to complete as many rounds as possible within that 6.5 minutes of time, and then you will get a water break as you finish each combo station. So even though you see the 0 rest there, there's still water breaks incorporated into this. It's not straight into another 6.5 minutes. And make sure that people are holding themselves accountable to their rep targets, the actual movement standards, and actually counting a quality rep versus not. Could be a fun way for you to get involved with your super competitive people and just be like, that's not a rep. They're not going to like you for that, but I would say throw yourself in there just because it does make it a little bit more fun and competition driven. And then B, you're going to keep catching your rest. Movements to watch. There's a lot of hinge and a lot of lower back load that goes into this workout here, from your hinging that you're doing at 1A with the rower straight to 1B at the kettlebell bent over row with the kettlebells up off the floor. And then you've also got the sled pull. Box step ups are going to burn out your glutes. The thrusters are going to keep putting a load on your back and glutes as well. So just being sure that at these 3 stations in particular, we're watching for that fatigue and we're not seeing the dog on the beach, like rounded back, trying to perform these movements. Really, we're focusing on posture and technique on those. Combo station number 2, the core and glute engagement. Good time to start working on the anterior pelvic tilt and making sure that, like, as we're doing that press on the floor, they can feel their lower back into the ground as they press that dead ball up overhead. Same thing when we come up to the top of that thruster. Squeeze the glutes, fully extend the legs, squeeze the quads to allow your core to brace the way it should for your spine to get into that neutral position. And then combo station number 3 is just a lot of quads. So you're going to get really burned out from that. By the time you get to combo station 5, legs are going to be absolutely jello, and stepping up on that box is going to be awfully difficult. So just damp setting on that bike to help prevent that quad fatigue so we can really focus on the movement itself at station A with the lunge in that front loaded position. I'm talking like a 4 to 5 on that scale to just allow the legs to move freely, stretch themselves out, and then pop back into it. I would even recommend it for the rower and the skier to try to drop these down a little bit so people can focus on a faster repetition to get through that movement and get better form and better power output. So when they go to the race, if they want to do a 7 or an 8 or be crazy and do a 10, which I would never recommend on that damper, they've at least trained for the speed and the flow of it, of what it feels like with the fatigue. Now, week number 7, we got 2 more to go through with y'all. So Riddler's kind of approached the same way. Tempest, both of these is what this workout made me think of. And if they just met and created a workout, this is what it would be like. Okay. So partner-based workout, but it's more of an entire team-based. It's like the entire pod is going to be working. So you'll see on the bottom left corner with the movements, stations 3, 6, and 9 have our rep targets, and all 3 of those are the ergs once again. And then the movements that are behind that are going to be more of our strength and accessory movements to get through. What we're really focusing on is quick and smooth transitions throughout the pod and rotation, and getting back into that working set at station 1 without taking too much time off and starting to accumulate reps and volume with that time remaining. On the ergs, you can actually start tracking this like we did in Tempest. How many laps can each team get through, and then track it that way and have a winner at the end with like a scoreboard. Station 1, starting to get ourselves back under control. Station 2, starting to build the confidence, a little bit more strength and more weight behind those movements leading into the ergs, creating like a compromised workout for the ergs since we're fatiguing everything else before we hop on those. Now with the rep targets on the screen, these are going to take roughly about 45 to 60 seconds to complete. So stations 2, 5, and 8, making sure people are finding an appropriate weight to move for that 45 to 60 seconds that they're going to be there. And then for stations 1, 4, and 7, how many reps is realistic? 10.5 minutes of work at each station on this one. Realistically, how many pull-ups could you get in that amount of time needs to be a realistic goal. Use the bands as needed, modify them, drop them down into the lat pulls that we do on the bands as well. But again, just focusing on a consistent rep target as soon as you finish off those ergs to hit that within that 45 to 60, and then move it on from there as the partner rotates. Burpee box jump, actually working on stepping into the burpees, because the hopping consistently for 10.5 minutes is going to get tough as well. So taking that full step up with the right foot and then the left foot up by the hands and then execute your jump instead of doing a hop and a hop is going to end up saving a lot of people, especially as we get into the later part of this workout. And then the single arm kettlebell swing to high pull. Again, if we need to start modifying this, the shoulders start getting gassed from the thrusters and the ski erg, take it to just a double kettlebell swing, both hands on it, take the pull out, focus on wrist stability for those individuals that are starting to see problems with this. However, if they can knock it out, have them pick however many reps they're going to do on each side with that single arm and keep that as a consistent change for them as they're moving throughout. And very last one, this I think was the best one and probably most excited to throw this one out. This is a 60-minute workout. I know for us out in Houston, this is going to be a great simulation for us before March comes around. For those that are coming out to Houston in March, excited to see y'all. But also for those that are planning for races between the April and May timeframe, this is going to be a good simulated workout to take yourselves through. So 9 stations, same format as what we went through week 4 workout, except the rep targets are significantly higher and the ergs are now in place of that A station. So again, it goes back to the same focus that the A station is the primary focus that we need to get through. So with that 6 minutes of work, you should be able to hit those 1,000-meter targets that you see for the rower and the ski erg. The goal is for the members in this workout, though, to get familiar with the amount of work that it takes to complete a full zone in the HYROX race. So zone is what they refer to as what we call stations. You have 8 zones in that race, and these are pretty close to the rep targets that you're going to see in the race itself. Not every station is a rep target necessarily. Some of them are meters covered, such as like the walking lunges, the burpee broad jumps. That's covered more in meters rather than the amount of reps you can actually complete. Understanding that if some people are wanting to possibly walk these out, I would create a little bit of space in your floor setup if you're able to with all these movements that are there. But just having people actually feel what that load is like. And when we get to that A station, since we're in that longer set, this is really where you need to find your race pace. And this is where people need to start to establish and get that mindset down of what it's actually going to take for me to get through it. Softbox, once again, being set up to the appropriate heights, especially with the volume that's here. But want to regard just the double wide bell thruster that you see. It is a double on this one. The wall balls that you use in the race range from 10 pounds to 20 pounds. So if we need to drop that to a single wide bell thruster, that may be appropriate for those 100 reps completed. So we're not doubling up the weight on those. And then the running itself, maybe you just have somebody go outside and run for an allotted distance, maybe like in 1,000-meter run, and then have them come back inside. However, if we are doing it inside the studio, please coach these as sprints rather than it just being an elongated jog back and forth at a steady pace. Have people move with intensity if they're going to be doing it that way. And then same thing as I said on the walking lunges, make sure that there's space around the floor that we may be able to create a lane for people to execute the walking lunges if they choose to do that instead. All right. There's a whole nother 4 workouts included in there that are all race specific workouts that I'm going to make an additional presentation that's going to be a race ready. That's going to include just a little bit more detail on race prep itself, and then also just those 4 additional workouts to put in a separate presentation. There's going to be a timeline of the workouts coming into the new year as well, of days we're going to be looking at to incorporate these to try to streamline an actual training program across the entire CSG network, which super excited about. One of the other presentations I'll be bringing y'all's way, getting your HYROX training club started, getting the social medias posted, getting the things set up in MindBody to where you can actually run this as a class if you're doing open gym training, and starting to create that sub community within your immediate communities that you have. I'm going to ask Anna to send something out in the next newsletter of just additional things you would like to actually see for these next presentations, to try to bring things that are actually of value and substance for y'all, so we can cut time from all the webinars and focus on the things that are actually going to enhance our coaching on here in a very friendly and effective way for us to see it and for us to bring to our teams.